think it's time for Dragon Ball to die. And I take no pleasure in saying that.
Okay.
This franchise has brought me.
I watched this movie for the first time on Pornhub.
What's good? Put 3.5 in the backwood.
What's up, y'all? Today, I'm doing something a little different because I like anime and shit. So, I want to start getting into the anime community and like watching, making anime videos or even reacting to certain anime content type shit. So today I seen this pop up on my feed, the harsh truth about Dragon Ball's future. I'm curious on what he's gonna talk about in this because honestly, Dragon Ball's in a place right now where it's like I don't know, and I think it's because of Toriyama dying. Toriyama passing away really kind of put a shift in things. The manga's still getting done though. I feel like what's his name, Toyotaro. I feel like he gonna put it in a good write it in a good direction, but I don't know. It's hard to say. He been doing good so far though, but he had Toriyama supervision before, I think, or some shit. So now it'll really just be him. He has to be feeling a lot of pressure, bro. That's a lot of shoes to fill. Cause Toriyama was fucking goated. Toriyama made Dragon Ball, nigga. But he's been working with him for a while now, so he may have, I don't know, bro. But let's just get into the video. The harsh truth about Dragon Ball's future. Let's see what Big Toon finna talk about. And shout out Big Toon for making the video.
I think it's time for Dragon Ball to die. And I take no pleasure in saying that.
Okay.
This franchise has brought me and so many others joy for decades. As a collective, Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball Z, and even Dragon Ball GT stood in rarefied air. But in the last 10 years, there have been so many decisions that have changed how we look at this legendary franchise. And in order to truly understand how it's come to this, we have to go back. Back to November 20th, 1997. After its introduction, this is the very first day where the Dragon Ball franchise didn't have an anime. And this day is also the start of what I call the down years. Now, contrary to how it sounds, I think this period of time was actually the best for the Dragon Ball franchise. It was a period of time where all fans could do was reminisce. If you liked Dragon Ball in any capacity during the down years, all you could do is watch the old stuff and play the games. And the more you go back and watch the old stuff, the more you find appealing about it. Some of the traits that these series have that are objectively negative become part of its charm. And there's one word that describes this process: nostalgia. From 1997 to 2013, nostalgia was Dragon Ball's ride or die. It was the silent co-pilot that kept the franchise alive and relevant even with no anime airing.
Nostalgia's a motherfucker too. I'm a nostalgia whore, bro. Like, I don't know, that shit be crazy. Nostalgia really is like a crazy thing, bro. Because even if some shit's bad, even if it's some butt, you might just have fond memories of it, and you're just gonna ride with it regardless of how shit it might be.
Let's break down how that happened. When Dragon Ball GT concluded in 1997, it left fans with a sense of finality. Even for someone like me who was born well after 1997, I could feel the finality that GT brought. Whether people loved or hated GT, that last episode with Goku riding off with Shenron and the time skip to Goku Jr. felt like the curtain dropping on a legendary era. And
bro, the ending to Dragon Ball GT is the best ending. I ain't gonna lie. It's one of the best endings of Dragon Ball. It might be the best ending. I debate it's the best ending. Just the way it was, Goku saying goodbye to everybody, flying off with Shenron, and then later on you see Goku Jr. and all that shit, bro. Yeah, that's like the best Dragon Ball ending. I'll argue with that. I'll argue about that shit. I ain't gonna lie.
A long time, it was. No new series, no new arcs, just reruns, VHS tapes, and a mountain of merchandise. But that silence, it made people miss Dragon Ball. GT's ending wasn't just an ending, it became a memory trigger. Fans clung to their love for Dragon Ball Z and the thrill it brought them as kids or teens, and that emotional attachment became powerful currency.
And how mysterious.
Now we gotta fast forward to 2009. Dragon Ball Z Kai wasn't a new story, it was just a cleaned up and edited version of Dragon Ball Z without...
Kai was my introduction to Dragon Ball from beginning to like Cell Saga. That was my introduction to Dragon Ball. I'm lying, but that was like my first time watching the whole series through. My dad had the VHS tapes though. So he had VHS tapes of Dragon Ball GT, at certain parts of GT, and like maybe Namek Saga or Saiyan Saga. but I'd never watched them all. I'd only see them just in passing type shit. So Kai when it was airing on Nicktoons was my first full watch through of Dragon Ball Z, and that shit crazy.
Philly. I think Dragon Ball Z Kai is one of the best things to ever happen to Dragon Ball. Kai gave longtime fans a reason to come back and relive the series with a fresh coat of paint while introducing a new generation to Goku, Vegeta, and the rest of the Z fighters.
Yeah.
It was safe, familiar, and polished. Even though some don't like it as much, it was still a reminder
Especially
of how
that
epic
intro,
the
nigga.
original
That
felt.
intro
But
was
even
crazy.
before Kai, the video games played a crucial role as well.
Facts,
The Budokai and
facts,
Tenkaichi
facts,
games
facts.
kept the franchise.
Facts. Because before Kai even came out, I still had the games though. I was always playing the games, the PS2, the Budokai games, I was on Ultimate Tenkaichi, Raging Blast, all of them shits, even the bad games like Battle of Z and all that shit. And I actually enjoyed Battle of Z. A lot of the Dragon Ball games that people don't like are ones that I just so happen to like though.
In the spotlight. And then after Kai, games like Raging Blast 1 and 2 only added on to that. Even the early internet, forums like Kanzenshu, AMVs on YouTube, fan dubs, all thrived during the down years. People were constantly...
Nigga, I still watch Abridged to this day. I'll put on the 13-hour version of the full series and just let that shit play. Bro, what?
Talking about Goku versus Superman and dreaming of what a Dragon Ball Z continuation could look like. I said earlier that nostalgia was Dragon Ball's ride or die, but really, Dragon Ball had become nostalgia. Dragon Ball didn't need new content to stay relevant because nostalgia was the content. Every remaster, re-release, and video game leaned on what fans remembered and loved, and that emotional connection made the franchise feel timeless. No, it was timeless. And during those years, Dragon Ball had built up so much nostalgic goodwill that people were ready to follow it anywhere. And that's exactly what they did. March 29th, 2013. That's the last day of the down years. Because on March 30th, Akira Toriyama would bring the Dragon Ball story back to center stage with Dragon Ball Z Battle of Gods. And this was one of my favorite moments ever.
This shit was crazy.
No amount of words can describe exactly how I felt when I learned about this movie.
I watched this movie for the first time on Pornhub. This and Revival of F. That was my first time watching these movies was on Pornhub because I couldn't find them anywhere. I couldn't find the movie anywhere, but it just so happened to be on Pornhub. So there's a random fact for the day.
Words can describe the anticipation. What did this mean? Would it be the same characters? When will it be taking place? Where will it be taking place? Thoughts like these swirled in my brain as a child, and upon watching the movie for the first time, it didn't take long for me to come to the following conclusion. Battle of Gods is the best Dragon Ball movie ever. As a kid who grew up watching the original 13 Dragon Ball Z movies on repeat, those films were my bread and butter. I knew every punch, transformation, and monologue.
Like at the time, maybe, but then Broly came out. I mean, okay, Battle of Gods for what it was and what it did. Okay, I'll take that. I guess you could say it's the best, but Broly exists now. You could even throw Superhero in there. Superhero was a good movie too.
So when Battle of Gods was announced, it felt surreal. After years of rightfully thinking Dragon Ball was finished, suddenly there was something new. I remember finally getting a chance to watch it and being completely floored. The tone felt familiar yet fresh. The pacing, the humor, the character moments, it was Dragon Ball in its purest form, but with a new sense of purpose. From a storytelling and animation standpoint, it went way beyond what I expected. Most of the old Dragon Ball Z movies were fun, but they were stories that left a lot to be desired. They were self-contained, flashy showcases of power with minimal narrative weight. But Battle of Gods broke that mold. The introduction of Beerus and Whis didn't just bring new...
Super Saiyan 3 and the Spirit Bomb, they were like the strongest shit in the movies. If he pulls out Super Saiyan 3, he's killing a nigga. If he pulls out the Spirit Bomb's killing a nigga. Half the villains in the movies got beat by the Spirit Bomb. Like, he was just spamming that shit.
Characters, it brought an entirely new scale to the universe. And then there was Super Saiyan God. That form wasn't just a power-up, it was a statement. It told us the rules were changing. The Dragon Ball world was now bigger and more strange than we once thought. It was the most impactful expansion of lore since Raditz dropped a bombshell about Goku being an alien, and it lit my imagination on fire all over again. Yet as much as I love the movie itself, and I really do love everything that it brought to the table, the biggest thing Battle of Gods gave me was hope. Hope that Dragon Ball wasn't over. that this universe, which had been such a big part of my childhood, still had more stories to tell. Seeing that movie was like watching a door creak open after being shut for years, and on the other side was the promise of a brand new era. It seemed like Battle of Gods would make all of the down years worth it. And sure enough, on April 28th, 2015, Dragon Ball Super was announced. And as happy as I was that day, I truly believe it set in motion the decline of this legendary franchise.
I get where he's about to go with this, because beginning of Super was kind of hard to watch. Not hard to watch. Well, yeah, it was hard to watch because the animation in the beginning was butt in certain episodes. They just remade the movies, and we had to sit through that shit for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. It was so butt, bro. Then we finally got to the Universe 6 tournament shit. I think that was the next arc. But it's just like, I get where he's about to go with this. And I agree.
Dragon Ball Super started off rough.
I agree.
There's no two ways around it. I think one of the biggest mistakes that anyone has ever made regarding the Dragon Ball franchise is how the beginning of Dragon Ball Super was handled.
Yes.
How something starts is just as, if not even more important than how it finishes. And to this day, I cannot understand why in the world the show directors decided to retell the Battle of Gods and Resurrection of F stories.
Why?
Battle of Gods is a great movie.
But we have
if I wanted to see it again, I just watched the movie, which is a shorter and better overall experience.
Better.
Resurrection of F isn't a movie I'd ever rush to rewatch, but if I did, I'd prefer to watch the shorter version of it. Now, there's an argument that these movies were retold to give newer fans and those who didn't see the movies a chance to experience them.
But
to
they
me,
just came
that's
out.
not a good
How?
reason.
That's not
we
a good
went without
reason
Dragon
at all.
Ball for nearly 20 years.
That is not a good reason at all, because those movies had just fucking came out of 2 years within each other. Then they brought it back, and then they brought it back with butt animation. Like,
almost every Dragon Ball fan, and even those who weren't Dragon Ball fans, knew about those two movies and how they introduced new ideas to the franchise. Because looking back at it now, those two arcs do more than just start the series off on a bad foot. These arcs became the shaky foundation that Dragon Ball Super had to stand on. For a franchise returning after nearly 2 decades, fans were hungry for new lore, new adventures, and a bold new direction. Instead, we were given extended versions of stories we had already seen, and the excitement of seeing Dragon, it felt like the show was stalling before it had even truly begun. And this was critical because Dragon Ball Super had the chance to immediately expand the scope of the Dragon Ball universe. Battle of Gods teased us with the Resurrection of F arc only made it worse. It's a story that, while cool as a movie spectacle, it lacked any emotional or narrative weight and came with a villain whose return didn't bring anything new. These decisions made me question whether Super was here to build on the legacy of Z or simply capitalize on nostalgia. It's not that the tournament itself was bad. In fact, it had solid fights and world building. But because it followed two sagas that dragged the energy down, fans weren't nearly as invested as they could have been. The initial excitement that came with the return of a beloved franchise had already been diluted, and Super had to work twice as hard to earn back the respect of its audience. And although it was a tall task, that's exactly what Super did.
They did. See, they did, but like, they didn't execute. This arc started out crazy. Then you get to the end with the Zeno shit and Trunks getting fucking rage, Super Saiyan rage. I don't like that transformation. It's random as fuck. Then he just learns the Spirit Bomb, Spirit Sword. Bro.
Dragon Ball Super.
I like the Black Arc though, but it's just certain shit you just gotta keep it 100 about, bro.
But then something shifted. When I saw this for the first time, and then I saw this.
Facts.
It was evident that the tone was getting darker.
Got excited.
The storytelling had sharpened, and suddenly Super began to feel like it had found its purpose. The Zero Mortals plan and the Tournament of Power didn't just improve the show, they transformed it. These arcs were bold, high stakes, and creatively ambitious. The Zamasu and Goku Black storyline brought a philosophical depth and genuine menace that hadn't been seen since the Best of Z, while the Tournament of Power showcased the vastness of the multiverse in a way that made the Dragon Ball world feel bigger than ever. These arcs embraced the core potential of Super, to explore the unknown corners of the multiverse, raise the stakes without relying solely on brute strength, and give each character from major players to minor fan favorites a role to shine. We can argue about execution in these arcs all day, But these arcs captured the essence of what Super should have always been striving towards, and so it seemed that with a newfound direction, the anime could only go up from there. And yet, just as Dragon Ball Super hit its stride, it was over. After waiting nearly 2 decades for the franchise to return, fans were given 3 short years and 131 episodes before the anime came to an abrupt halt. Again, it's frustrating because we finally saw the potential of Super realized, only to have the momentum cut short. The foundation had finally been built, but there wasn't enough time to build on it. Thankfully, the franchise didn't come to a complete standstill. We got 2 new movies that I think are both good at the very least, and the manga continued forward, giving us new characters and stories that varied in quality, but still expanded the world of Dragon Ball. And so for about a year now, we've been in another down period, and we all know why. Dragon Ball Daima was a surprise, and I'm grateful, yet I think you all know.
Rest in peace, Toriyama, man. The day I found out about that shit hurt, boy. I had to go tell my pops. I was like, bro,
I feel about it. If you don't, check out my last video. But since finishing Dragon Ball Daima, I haven't been able to shake the feeling that maybe this really needs to be the end. And not just in the let's take another break and come back later kind of way. I mean truly, definitively, let it rest. Let the franchise stand as the pillar of fiction it already is without constantly trying to reinvent itself just to stay in circulation. We've had our return, we've seen new stories, new forms, and new characters, but somewhere along the way, it started to feel like I was continuing out of love for what I've already seen rather than excitement for what's to come. And as much as it hurts to say it, that might be a sign that we've reached the natural endpoint. I don't enjoy nitpicking this franchise, I really don't. I grew up with Dragon Ball. I lived through the DVDs, the reruns, the movies, the school debates. I can talk for hours, literally hours, about why Goku's first Super Saiyan transformation is still one of the most powerful moments in.
I feel like since Toriyama has passed away, it should end. But I feel like they should at least animate the last few manga chapters at least though. At the very least, animate those or those 2 arcs, the manga shit, and then just leave it there. But see, they can't because they've already built some shit. So now they gotta at least write a conclusion though, man. Because like there's too much stuff they've built upon already. So where if you just leave it dry now, it wouldn't really work. I feel like can't really end it right now, but they could with one more, like maybe one more arc or some shit. They could really wrap it up. But I don't know if they're gonna do that though, bro. I get what he's saying though. Instead of the legacy getting fucked up by more bullshit, stop it while we're ahead, type shit.
Make history. But at some point, we have to stop and ask ourselves, are we praising Dragon Ball for what it is today, or are we clinging to what it used to be? The last 10 years have had its moments. Battle of Gods, the Tournament of Power, Broly, but those moments have been surrounded by uneven storytelling, recycled ideas, and a growing disconnect between the franchise's legacy and its current identity. I don't think it's wrong to want more from something you love, but I also think there's value in recognizing when a story has said everything it needs to say. And if we're being honest, there's a portion of the Dragon Ball community that understandably just doesn't want to move on, and who can blame them? For a lot of people, including myself, Dragon Ball isn't just a show, it's comfort. It's childhood. It's something familiar in a world that's constantly changing. But that longing to hold on to the past can sometimes get in the way of growth for the story. If the only reason we're asking for more Dragon Ball is because we missed those times when we were younger, then maybe it's time to step back and let nostalgia do what it's always done best. If the last decade has shown us anything, it's that continuing Dragon Ball endlessly doesn't necessarily protect its legacy, it exposes it. It invites criticism, it invites fatigue, and it raises the risk of turning something timeless into something tiresome. For 20 years, nostalgia was Dragon Ball's greatest ally. It kept the series alive in the hearts of fans across generations without needing new content to validate its greatness. Maybe it's time to go back to that, to let the franchise rest, stand proudly on what it's already achieved, and be remembered for what it was at its best. To me, that's not giving up, that's honoring the legacy. Maybe that's just me, so let me know how you feel in the comments. But with that being said, this is Big Toon, and thanks for watching. Y'all have a good.
This was a good video. Because I'm really thinking now about the points he made and shit. If it were to end completely, I wouldn't be mad because Dragon Ball's already done what it needed to do. I stand on my point to where they should just end it after they animate the manga chapters. I think they should just end it there. End it after that. Cause it's really not gonna be the same without Toriyama, bro. That's my whole thing. This was a W video. Shout out Big Tune for making this video. Cause I'm really in my head right now thinking about some shit like, damn. But that's the end of this video. I hope y'all enjoyed the reaction. Shout out Big Tune for the video. And I'm gonna see y'all in the next one, bro. Let me know what y'all think in the comments as well. For whoever sees this. Let me know what y'all think, bro. For real.
See, if I snuck up in your bedroom, touch you while you sleep, would you act surprised as if you didn't know it's me?